This is Democracy Watch. So, Mark, we've got a very interesting story here as it relates to Donald Trump and Nikki Haley. There's a group called Haley Voters for Harris. They used to be the Haley Voters for Biden. They've just received a cease and desist from Nikki Haley because she doesn't want the group to keep using their name, especially given the fact that she has now come out and endorsed Donald Trump herself. Is there a case here?
There is not a case. I mean, the fact is people are allowed to say who they support. These are presumably people who supported Nikki Haley in the primary, and now they proudly support Kamala Harris, and good for them. There is a federal law that says you cannot use the name of a candidate in a political committee in a way that would cause confusion. So, for example, you couldn't have a rogue group call themselves Kamala Harris 2024, right? Because you'd be fraudulently suggesting that you are that candidate. Right. No one is going to think that Haley Voters for Harris is actually Nikki Haley. It's the voters, right? And the voters are expressing who they support, and good for them, and shame on Nikki Haley. All of those things she said and people thought she had conviction about. Another Republican. We saw this with Ted Cruz in 2016. We saw this with Marco Rubio in 2016. Hey, we saw this with J.D. Vance, right? J.D. Vance once told the truth about Donald Trump. And now we're seeing it with Nikki Haley.
With that said, if Nikki Haley does engage in some kind of litigation, I mean, this was just the first steps. It was a cease and desist, which I feel like is relatively low lift and probably just intended to have a chilling effect. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But for right now, I do want to know if there is some type of litigation that moves forward. Is the goal here just to try to basically grind the gears and cause them to spend money that they wouldn't otherwise have to spend in an effort to basically prevent them from being able to operate as this PAC?
Look, if there's actual litigation here, we ought to check and see what Rudy Giuliani's been doing that day, or maybe Jenna Ellis. I mean, this would be like you said, cease and desist letters are pieces of paper, right?
Yeah.
I'd be very surprised if there is litigation here, and if there is, then my guess is it's exactly as you said. They are simply trying to dissuade people from expressing their First Amendment rights. It would be really something for Nikki Haley to decide to sue people who are her supporters. I mean, that is actually. It had not occurred to me until you asked the question. Maybe that is the ultimate supplicant to Donald Trump. I love you so much. I know Ted Cruz was willing to not defend his wife against your attacks, but I'm willing to go further. I'm willing to sue my supporters to tell you how much I love you, Donald.
I mean, look, if there's one thing that's appreciated in Trump's Republican Party, it is doing whatever you can to show your slavish fealty to the guy. And yes, your exact point. I mean, you have Ted Cruz, endorsing the guy who called his wife ugly, and then you have Nikki Haley out there saying, "Hold my beer. I'm going to sue my own supporters on your behalf." And by the way, it's not like all of this goodwill is going to redound to her benefit. She's a persona non grata in the Republican Party.
It's absolutely right, and it's incredible to watch the journey that these people go through. I mean, as you recall, Nikki Haley didn't just campaign against Donald Trump. Donald Trump insulted Nikki Haley's husband. And here we are. She's speaking at his convention and sending these kinds of letters. J.D. Vance, was very clear in what he thought about Donald Trump, and now he is like a mini Trump.
Yeah, he called him America's Hitler just a few years ago. This wasn't decades ago. It was just a few years ago when he came onto the scene. But, with J.D. Vance, with Nikki Haley and Ted Cruz, someone like Ronna McDaniel, who, dropped her own last name in blind deference to Trump.
I forgot that. I forgot the last name. Well, that was good, too.
The only thing more pathetic than these people who prove themselves to, grovel at the feet of Donald Trump is the fact that the next batch of people will just line up to do the exact same thing, not recognizing that they're not special. It's going to happen to you too. Donald Trump doesn't care about anybody other than himself. He views all of his relationships as transactional. And the moment you lose your usefulness to him, he will gladly discard you the same way he's discarded everyone, from Michael Cohen to Ronna McDaniel to George Papadopoulos to Gordon Sondland. I mean, the list goes on, and it's never ending. Lindsey Graham, for example. And yet, the line of lemmings just continues. With that said, I do want to go back to the point of the chilling effect. What do you think? What kind of a standard does this set that it's not just Nikki Haley who has threatened to engage in litigation for for anything that might be perceived as beneficial to the Democrats, but more broadly, I mean, Republicans largely rely on not just litigation but frivolous litigation to kind of shoulder their way into getting what they want.
Yeah, they have become the party of frivolous litigation. We knew this about Donald Trump actually before he became president, right? He was famous when he was, before he was a candidate for having threatening letters sent and filing frivolous lawsuits to try to intimidate people in business. And then, of course, that carried over into his role as a candidate. And then we saw it really explode on the scene with all of the frivolous litigation after the 2020 election, which my law firm and my legal team and I were proud to represent President Biden and the DNC on in defeating in court. And we've seen the aftermath of that, right? We've seen the wreckage of that. We've seen lawyers, the Trump and Republican lawyers indicted. We've seen them disbarred. We've seen them humiliated. We've seen them subject to civil judgments. And in the case of Rudy Giuliani in bankruptcy, although he's been kicked out of bankruptcy court. And so, this is a tactic that they have adopted. They have adopted as a party the idea that they will use lawyers to try to intimidate their opponents, even when those cases are frivolous. And it is high time that the courts can, step up their holding people accountable for this. It is good to see the disbarments and the sanctions that we've seen about the 2020 conduct. But we simply, we have to recognize what the Republican Party, how they view the law, how they view lawyers, and account for it in the way in which our legal system operates.
Well, to that point, I've beat this drum before, and I think it's important to continue saying in every video that we do. But the work that you do is completely invaluable, and this really is ground zero of the fight that we're facing against Republicans right now. It is in the courts. So a small step that everybody watching could take right now is just to sign up for Democracy Docket. It's the free news outlet Marc founded to focus on everything voting and elections. It's a great way to support Marc and his team, and also to get an amazing newsletter. It's a resource that I use on a daily basis, so I'll put the link right here on this screen and also in the post description of this video. Marc, to that point then, do we have the resources on the left to fight back against this deluge of, again, not just lawsuits, but frivolous litigation that we're seeing right now?
Yeah, so, I hope so. We all need to be very sober about what we are facing, because the scourge of Republican litigation is multifaceted, as we've been discussing. It is targeting voters. It is targeting Nikki Haley supporters who want to support Kamala Harris. It is targeting election officials, right? The right wing has become very comfortable in using the legal system to weaponize against democracy. And so, for my part, my legal team and I, we are in court in more than 50 places trying to prevent against voter suppression and ensure free and fair elections. But as you see, this tidal wave of money that is coming on the other side, to have, Stephen Miller attacking public policy, to have lawyers involved in Project 2025, which would further undermine the rule of law. There is a massive coordinated constellation of right-wing organizations funded by big money to use the legal system to undermine the rule of law. And we all need to recognize that, and we all need to fight back against it.
Well, again, I'll repeat what I said before. The work that you do is completely invaluable in pushing back against that deluge of litigation coming from the right. So for those who want to support the work that Marc and his team are doing, please sign up for Democracy Docket. Again, I'll put that link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Teller Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.